Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and glory, forever and ever. Amen. The honourable members, I wish to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery of grade 11 science students and their teachers from Kwikila Secondary School in Rigos District, Central Province. On behalf of the Parliament, I extend to the visitors a warm welcome to the National Parliament. Honourable members, I wish to inform you all that induction packs for members are still available for collection. Please visit the Parliamentary Library if you did not collect your pack. Thank you. Any petitions? Notices? Honourable members, question time. The Honourable Member for Delta Fry.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Question without notice on Balimo Airport construction and completion. Mr. Deputy Speaker, thank you for recognizing the people of Delta Fly District in Western Province by giving me time to raise my question without notice. Mr. Deputy Speaker, my question without notice goes to the Minister for Transport and Civil Aviation. It's on relation to Balimo Airport construction and completion. And please, Mr. Prime Minister, to take note. Mr. Speaker, before I proceed, I would like to provide a bit of background here. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in 2013, a contract was awarded to Ada Civil Works by then CSTB was approved by the NEC that time. Mr. Speaker, the Balimo Airport project was funded through the 10% equity non-CMC funds held in the trust accounts by the Department for the Mining People of Western Province. Mr. Deputy Speaker, at that time, the funding was not sufficient to attract bigger contractors who are specialized in airport construction, such as Global, Hebo, and so on. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I understand that when Balimo Airport was first constructed, it was indeed intended to be emergency airport for planes traveling from Daru to Kiunga, Kiunga to Moro, and Kiunga to Mount Hagen, or vice versa. It's also located in a strategic location whenever there is emergency while in the airport. The planes always will have Balimo Airport where they can land. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the airport construction has not been completed to date after almost 10 years when the contract was first awarded. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the long delays in getting the Balimo Airport completed thus far really affecting service delivery by public servants, operation of business houses, and movement of the general public. Mr. Speaker, in 2020, our Prime Minister, Honorable James Marabe, was in Balimo for Cultural Show Center opening. He saw for himself what the situation was like. Mr. Deputy Speaker, due to the prolonged delays in the release of non-CMC funding and the completion of construction in 2021, while the late member was around, we visited the NAC office, wanted Ballymore Airport to be under NAC, given its strategic location. Mr. Deputy Speaker, my question without notice are as follows. Mr. Deputy Speaker, given that Octari mining has been and is still the biggest revenue earner in the country, can the national government direct NAC to upgrade the state of Ballymore Airport and recognize it as airport instead of airstrip, since it is located in a new Delta Flight District headquarters? Number two, Mr. Deputy Speaker, can the Marabe Rosso government step in to fund Ballymore Airport project completion, possibly through the ADB loan, like all other major airport infrastructure in the country, and it including the national budget? Mr. Deputy Speaker, once funding is secured and made available by the national government, can the NAC make it its business to have the engineers based on the ground to ensure successful completion of according to the scope of works? Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Minister for Transport and Civil Aviation.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Igolong, Member Blow Middle Fly or Delta Fly, for a series of questions. To respond to the member, the good member, I would like to highlight some of the process and procedures. Firstly, as he stated, we need to understand the status of the airport, whether it's an airstrip or an airport. If it's an airstrip, then it still falls under Rural Airstrip Association. If it's an airport, then it falls under and can fall under the National Airport Corporation. But at this stage, it looks like it's still an airstrip. So we need to treat it like an airstrip. And if the member wishes to upgrade, then there's certain process and procedures we need to follow. One, importantly, I would like to advise the member through you, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, is that firstly, we need to get CASA to survey the airstrip to determine the length, the size, and whatever future plan it has. That's number one. We need to get an engineering scope done. Number two, I'm pretty sure since it's an airstrip, it won't be under National Airport Corporation as yet, but look at the process and procedures, how National Airport Corporation can take responsibility for the airport if and when it's upgraded. So, as we are all in need for airstrips within our respective districts, I don't question the need for Delta Fly having this particular airstrip. In relation to the ADB loan, KEDAP 2 is in the process now of being signed. There is an allocation for rural airstrip within the ADB loan, but what we need to try to determine is which rural airstrip has been identified for that particular funding. Now, having said that, the funding in KEDAP 2 is not as big as KEDAP 1. That's number one. The other funding within KEDAP 2 is also focused on other infrastructure other than just airports. Okay, and that's why the funding is not as big. But can I reassure the good member, Deputy Speaker, that happy to look into it and assist him and other rural airstrips in other districts as well, to try and understand the status of those airstrips and then how best the civil aviation or CASA and NAC can come into play to try and assist to get that airstrip open or upgrade to a specific category that they desire. For an upgrade, I would just like to state here that if you're looking at bigger planes to land on that airstrip, it'll require certain category and certain engineering scope that needs to be done. In terms of costing, the costing can come from national government or it can come from the DSIP or whatever other funding that's allocated to the member. But it's important that we get the engineering done, understand the member's aspiration in terms of development on the airstrip, and try to support him to get the necessary fund to get it to the level he wants it at. But different aircraft size will determine on the type of engineering and scope of work that needs to be engaged in with that particular airstrip. Thank you, Speaker.
The Honourable Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for allowing me to direct this question without notice to the Prime Minister. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the 2022 national elections were chaotic. The common roll was not complete, and many of our people did not exercise their constitutional rights to vote under a free and fair environment. Our claim that PNG is a democratic country is demonstrated by the way we as leaders are voted into this House. And if there are problems associated with our voting system, we must fix those problems before the next elections in 2027. On this side of the House, we do acknowledge that the government has established a special parliamentary committee on the 2022 national general elections. And we are grateful because this is a bipartisan approach to inquire into and report on the conduct of the 2022 national general elections. Through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, my question to the Prime Minister is, Prime Minister, do you have a specific time frame that you expect the Special Parliamentary Committee to complete its works so that we can get into the serious business of reforming and tightening up our electoral laws in Papua New Guinea? 2, while we appreciate the setting up of the Special Parliamentary Committee, and while we have respect for the members of the committee, the truth is we are the same affected party. And so I would like to go one step further and ask the Prime Minister if we could consider an additional independent process free of biasness. So many of us sitting on the committee and over here in Parliament, we are affected by those electoral laws and the biasness and everything that's happening to our electoral system. And therefore, we are considering and asking for consideration if there would be an independent process free of this biasness to be also included as part of the review process. And number 3, Prime Minister, you have been hinting at the use of biometric voting system in the 2027 national general elections. So does the government have plans to roll out the NID system nationwide to move this nation towards a biometric system of voting? Will funds be made available for this NID rollout program starting 2023 budget and the subsequent years to come to achieve this? Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Let me appreciate the opposition leaders' very, very important questions. The process of vote to entrench our democracy is something, a gift this generation of leaders and this parliament can pass on to the next generation, and I'm happy to respond to this question in a positive manner. The issue on The parliamentary committee we've established is a bipartisan parliamentary committee. We want them to be at work. We will give them full funding to, from an arm's length perspective. The opposition members and government members together could take a holistic review into what has happened in 2022, as well as what has happened in 2017, 2012, 2007, go back to the entire process and try to cover and put an informed, fact-based suggestion for us to go forward into a new voting process, a new process that also generates how we conduct elections in 2027 and beyond. There's an important election that is also coming up, Mr. Deputy Speaker. That is the election of our LLG presidents. So in response to what is the time we're looking at, in as much as possible, if the committee could establish, and we as a government don't want to influence the committee's independence of work. The committee is given freedom to look at the terms of reference. On a general upside, we're saying look at what happened in 2022 and the elections previously. And so the committee is at total liberty to establish the terms of reference, because it's a committee that is filled by members on the opposite as well as members in the government side. That work, they could almost go to work right away. From a desktop work, establish the template, what needs to be done, as well as a detailed work that should be started ASAP and run really an exhaustive work in early part of 2023. We will consider the suggestion for an independent presence or a process also. That is very much welcomed because this is not a matter that belongs to just myself or one or two. It is something, as I said earlier, a gift our leadership could give to the next generation, secure a better voting process in 27 and beyond. In fact, one of the benchmarks that we've set is 2025 and beyond. As a nation lives beyond 50 years of independence, this sort of thing could be a better stage for them, especially when it deals with election and election of leaders for parliament. It is a very serious business. We should better the process. And the overall time frame, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm looking at by 2025, we would have arrived at that process clearly, whatever it is. And that, as a government, we have a view on the NID process, the biometric process that should assist us. But I want to allow the independent process to really establish what needs to be done, so that it's seen that it is coming from a whole of Parliament approach, and also assisted by our people in community who can be represented in the independent process that the opposition leader is alluding to. Biometric, certainly, from government perspective, we look at biometric and NID based, so by 2027, there is no block voting, clan voting, individual, double voting, etc. One person, one vote can be arrived at in 2027. I think that is the basic, in a sort of succinct manner. That is the basic target we're looking at. And next year, we will start the process of census. We will do a deep census next year and on into 2024, so that by 2025, our nation is totally settled on our population. And we're looking at a country where you are a known person living in a country, not a person non grata. You're a real person living in a country, and the ID system, whether it's a physical ID or a biometric biometric-based ID, these are things we're looking at not only for voting, but for law and order, for business registration, for SME program. These are matters that we as government are proposing, but specifically relating to the voting process. We, as government, will hold back our commentary and get this committee to recommend to us, and certainly the consideration of our independent team to also work with this committee can be looked at, and by 2023, the proposal should have matured to a submission level that should come to government for implementation. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Hiri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I direct my series of questions without notice to the Honourable Minister for Commerce and Industry.
I ask that the Minister for Finance, Implementation and Planning and the Minister for State Enterprise take note of this series of questions, particularly as they relate to landowner benefit sharing structures. The issues I raised are historical in nature, and through the Marape Rosso government, Mr. Speaker, we have the opportunity to right the wrongs of the past because previous governments have been unable to do so. Mr. Speaker, as most of us are aware, the water supply and power supply of Port Moresby comes from Central Province, specifically the Koyaris area and Hiri-Koyari electorate. This morning, in fact, the water we drank for tea and the shower that we had was sourced from that particular water source. This infrastructure was built well before many in this House were born, with the Sirinamu Dam built in 1962. This was prior to there being any real consideration for rights and privileges of landowners in project area sites.
Honourable Member, may I interrupt you? Sorry, I did not hear the Minister you were asking a question to, so can you...
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is directed at the Minister for Commerce and Industry.
Commerce Industry. Go ahead.
So this was before the framework that PNG LNG project was subjected to, way before the mining sector was brought on. So, Mr. Speaker, water is a source, as is oil, is a resource as is oil and gas and minerals that have value to the end user. But water is even better in the long term because this water comes from Hiri-Koyari, is a renewable resource and has tremendous importance for the well-being of our people and the development of our national economy. In fact, graded as world-class standards. There are 4 components to the extraction and use of this resource that cover 4 land codes that are as follows. The Hogeri Development Company for inland water sources from Hogeri area, otherwise in the context of PNG LNG would be the wellhead. The Sirinamu Development Company for the catchment of the Sirinamu Dam. The Central Sageri Holdings Limited for riverine area in Central Sageri, which the pipeline traverses and the resource is pushed to a turbine, where the 4th landowner group is domiciled, which is the Rona Development Company, which houses the the turbine that powers the power and passes the water right down to Mount Eriyama. Over many years, a range of MOUs, agreements, and NEC decisions have sought to address concerns and grievances, and of course, stoppages and strikes. And to have them properly recognized for the economic contribution they make with their resources and land through Edaranu and Water PNG. In 2013, the NEC made a decision, number 356 of 2013, and it did a number of things. But firstly, it established a ministerial committee to be chaired by the Minister for Commerce, Trade and Industry, and number 2, endorsed and approved the proposed Sustainable Development Benefit Package for Koyari landowners that would be executed by the ministerial committee. Some payments have been done. There were 20 million kina approved, and 2 lots of payments were done. In 2015, a sum of 5 million kina was paid to SITCO, otherwise Sirinamu Development Company Limited. And in 2021, Rona Development Company received 5 million kina. Overall thought was that what has transpired from the NEC decision have been limited and inconsistent with Band-Aid actions. The ministerial committee never really advanced, and the Sustainable Development Benefit Package has not materialized. Mr. Speaker, these landowners do not ask for an ad hoc solution. They want legislative security that is developed through reforms that recognize the economic contribution these lands make to the nation's capital and the economy of this country. As such, Mr. Speaker, I raise a series of questions to the Minister on behalf of the landowners in my district of Hiri-Koyari. And in doing so, if I may, I recognize that this is an issue from well before the appointment of Honourable Minister of Commerce and before his time. And I seek the good Minister's consideration on this issue, as I know he is a man that wants to see clarity in policy. Similarly, while this is an issue relating to finance, making payment under the commitments of the previous executive government, this is well before Honourable Remo Paita's time, and his stewardship of his department has been outstanding. Also, there are matters relating to state-owned
Honourable members, I'll interrupt you. I would like you to make your statement short and get to your question.
Thank you kindly. So the question, Mr. Speaker, I say, number 1, when will the government release the 5 billion kina that is outstanding for each of the remaining landowner groups? That is 5 billion kina for Hogeri and 5 million kina for Central Sageri. And will the Minister convene a meeting of the designated ministerial committee to review the execution of the Sustainable Development Package for quarry landowners? And in reconvening this ministerial committee, will the Minister consider reforms to the Sustainable Development Package that will contemplate a proposal for a long-term benefit sharing structure and 2, equity and royalty plus infrastructure funds for roads, power and water for these very people who actually deliver the water that is firing up this country and the heart of this nation? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Commerce.
For giving me this opportunity to respond to the questions without notice raised by the good member for Koyari Hiri. Firstly, let me thank the people of Koyari Hiri for giving our good member inside of this Planupla electorate, along representing all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me clear some issues or questions raised by a good member for Hiri Koyari. I totally agree with a good member for many years that development of Shirinomu Dam to supply water and electricity generations, various MOUs, agreements and NEC decisions were made by the national government, and millions of kina allocated to address grievances of the Koyari people or Koyari water resource landowners. However, there is no proper records and monitoring due to the lack of proper coordination. Mr. Speaker, the government through NEC decision number 356 of 2013 endorsed the Sustainable Development and Benefits package for the Koyari resource landowners, including inland, catchment and lower Koyaris, and established the ministerial committee to chaired by the Minister of Commerce and Industry to oversee the implementation of those funds. Mr. Speaker, this matter can be addressed administratively by my department and Department of Treasury in assisting the ministerial committee to ensure that all documentations are in order to make a business case and funds are made available through Koyari Sustainable Development and Benefit Plans. Mr. Speaker, the question in line with the agreements reached amongst the Koyari water resource landowners that are organized into 4 landowner groups and their landowner umbrella companies. Number 1, inland water source, which is within the Hogeri area or Hogeri Development Company. Number 2, catchment area, Shirinomu Dam, which is Shirinomu Dam Corporation Company, Riverine area or Sogeri Central, Central Sogeri Holdings Limited, and power and water installation, which is the Rona Development Company. Those are the 4 landowner companies that only managing this funding were allocated to Koyari landowners. Mr. Speaker, the Sustainable Development and Benefits Package is the government's intervention program in response to Koyari grievances by making funds available to address their development needs as identified by them, such as access to basic infrastructure, health, education, and promote SMEs to start, develop, and graduate small to medium business, which can create employment and income and opportunities for the Koyari people. Mr. Speaker, the question of when should the money be released The answer is as long as Finance and Treasury allocate funds for the Koeri Sustainable Development and Benefit Package as an ongoing fund to ensure that all the Koeri water resource landowners are assisted to establish and undertake sustainable development projects or programs within the resource area. Mr. Speaker, since SIDCO or Sirinumu Dam, Sirinumu Corporation and Roadco, Rona Corporation received their share of 5 million each, Hogeri Development Company Limited and Central Sogeri Holdings Limited, as according to their agreements, will be considered for financial assistance as funds are confirmed to be available. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, the Ministerial Committee will ensure that there is a proper mechanism for monitoring and evaluation of these funds to ensure it is having positive impact on the livelihoods of the impacted resource owners of Koeri. Therefore, more funds will be required for the Ministerial Committee to monitor those or progress the use of those funds. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Obura. Obura Wanenara.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, before me raise a series of questions from me without notice, go along good member of the Imilo, SOE, State and Enterprise. Let me take this time to talk thank you, Lord people of Lomilo Obura Wanenara, long Makimi, the second time after 10 years of good holidays. Also, Mr. Deputy Speaker, whilst me at this time asking question, Misanap, me like congratulate him you yet. Talk thank you again, Lord people lo imilo makam, lo look save lo you. Na lo you lo come up Deputy Speaker again, lo second time. Congratulations lo you. Na me like since the time too lo talk amamas on behalf of Lord people lo milo Obura Wanenara, go lo member of long Taripori. Honorable James Marape, local person Prime Minister Bloyimi. One kind also go Deputy Prime Minister Bloyimi too. Lo display country, all people belong. Leilo Makim you second time. Questions blow me by short, Deputy Speaker. My series of questions without notice are directed to the Honorable Minister for State-Owned Enterprises. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in recent months and up to this day, the country is experiencing continuous power blackouts on a daily basis, and it's happening everywhere, in most of our cities and towns. The continuous blackout is affecting business houses, hospitals, schools, general public alike. The business houses are losing income. Our people's electrical appliances and equipment are being damaged, and frozen foodstuffs spoiled. The effect of continuous blackout is felt by everyone on top of pain already inflated by rising prices of goods and services. Mr. Deputy Speaker, my first question is the Minister aware of this continuous blackout problem? If he is, what is he doing about continuous blackout problem? What is his plans to remedy this problem? My second question, Deputy Speaker, is if we have a problem, instead of us pretending that all is well, can the good minister acknowledge that we have a serious problem at hand which is hard to solve by ourselves, and maybe start a partial sale of privatized PNG Power Limited? We should not continue to retain an entity that is not serving the interest of our good people of Papua New Guinea. My third and last question, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is could the Minister inform this House and the people of PNG current status of Ramu 2 power project? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for State Enterprise.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'd like to congratulate the member for one another for being re-elected by his people. Mr. Speaker, these are very important questions. To answer his first question, yes, Mr. Speaker, just like all of us, I'm very much aware of what's happening and that we are facing power blackouts right throughout the country. Number two, Mr. Speaker, yes, there are serious problems, but they can be managed if given time, Mr. Speaker. To start with, Mr. Speaker, we have got 3 different grids, major grids operating in the country. The Port Moresby grid, which is supplied, which is serviced by 130 megawatts power. Ramu, which is serviced by 106 megawatts of power, and what's the name? I forgot the name, but the power system in Eastern Britain province. The Warrangoy, sorry, Mr. Speaker, thank you. So they are serviced by those 3 different power grids. In relation to the power grid in Port Moresby, it's 130 megawatts of power grid that is serviced by 2 different sources, independent power suppliers who provide about 80 megawatts, and PNG Power itself, which supplies about 50 megawatts. Mr. Speaker, in the case of Port Moresby, everything was operating fairly well until PNG Power decided to undergo a major refurbishment and renovation program for its facilities up at the Siwinumu Tow Dam and Rauna. And Mr. Speaker, if I can ask all of us to remember, these systems were built by the Australians in the 60s. And since independence, there were no major refurbishment programs for those important assets. And the risk, Mr. Speaker, was that if there were no such major refurbishment work being carried out, machines would completely break down, and that PNG Power would then be required to buy new machines, which would take years. So as a result, PNG Power made that very important decision to refurbish those important items up there. And PNG Power was comforted by the fact that it was able to source powers from 2 independent power producers, namely New Power and Rio, as well as 25 megawatts from ExxonMobil. Unfortunately, ExxonMobil, due to a number of reasons, withdrew its services, leaving a gap of 25 megawatts. And at the same time, on the basis that Exxon was going to provide those power as well as power from the 2 independent power producers, PNG Power also made that decision to close down 2 important power stations at Kanudi and Moitaka, gas-powered power stations. And when this happened, PNG Power had to make every attempt to reopen those 2 gas-fired stations at Kanudi and Moitaka. And the problem, Mr. Speaker, was that when you shut down stations like that, it'll take years to bring them back again. So it was a decision that also reflected badly on the competence of the people at PNG Power, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker. So we've had to fly experts back from Korea, especially to rehabilitate those 2 stations. And I can assure the people of Port Moresby that Moitaka will be back on full production in 2 weeks' time, and Kanudi will be back before Christmas. Hopefully, we will not be spoiling our Christmas for this year. So our plans are to ensure that we have full power back before Christmas. Unfortunately, we had to shut down the Siwinumu Tow Dam generators as well as Rauna, so we've had this difficulty. And those difficulties were compounded when ExxonMobil decided to cease providing power supply to Port Moresby. Mr. Speaker, in the case of the Ramu grid, again, we've had issues with the drought, an unusual drought, and we've had good reports for the last 2 weeks to the effect that rain has started falling and that the dam is continuing to fill up, and before the end of December, it will be then back to full capacity, and we should be have those minutes up there. But in the meantime, we have an expensive IBP producer which is providing service or power to lay at much higher prices. It is a cause of concern, but these are issues that we are beginning to manage them. Mr. Speaker, we have identified the cause of the problems, a combination of management as well as technical requirements, and we have not set back. We've devoted most of our time for the last 3 to 4 months to fix this. So, Mr. Speaker, we will be able to have a steady power before Christmas. In the case of Ramutu, Mr. Speaker, it's an important project that is being developed by a consortium of one of the largest power companies from China called Sinohydro, as well as another company from Shenzhen. There are 2 companies which have reputations for providing uninterrupted power to the growing city of Shenzhen, and one of them was involved in the construction, Mr. Speaker, of the Three Gorges Dam, the world's biggest dam. And PNG Power as well as KCH was able to go through a process which resulted in the consortium being selected to build, operate, and transfer. So this is a project. If it eventually gets off the ground, we'll see our people of Morobe through the Morobe provincial government and the impacted landowners having 20% of the project, equity in the project, and our people of Eastern Islands through their provincial government and the landowners having another 20%, thereby our people having 40% equity in this project, with the remaining 60% being maintained by PNG Power. For the first time since independence, the Morobe government has recognized the need of our people. We've had a case where our landowners of Ramu, Yonki, have seen power transmission being put up across the land, and they have not been able to have access to power as well as equity in the business. So this is a game-changing formula that has been worked up by this government, and hopefully in the event that Wafi Golpo are able to agree to take power from this important power source, our people from Morobe, represented by their provincial government and the landowners, as well as our people from Eastern Islands, will have for the first time equity, not 5% or 2%, but significant equity, 40% in the project. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We have a supplementary. Honourable Governor from Morobe, what's your supplementary question?
Mr. Speaker, this country will facing big play of power. Honourable by Minister Nolan will govern this country. Every day there's a power cut in the city of Leh. Every day, after every 3 hours. We need power in this country to generate whatever business that you may work in long em. We need power. None of the country but we talk you go come leaders by go talk go come you may sapa.
Honourable Governor, can you get straight to your question?
Mr. Speaker, now I'm coming to this question. Because the power too affecting Makamna everywhere. So, Mr. Speaker, with the greatest respect. So, Mr. Minister, country cannot, by even abolition, country will long, gaman long, member will go gaman him stop. We need a tangible and drastic action taken in relation to the generation and the provisions of power in this country. In this country, no bloody joke, sorry for my words. So, Minister, now you're talking to the Parliament now. You must go to, you know why you conduct him inquiry. Question you can send him.
Honourable Governor, you have a point of order. We have a point of order, Prime Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, just legally point of order with respect, law.
Honourable Governor, may you resume your seat and we have the Prime Minister's point of order. Prime Minister.
May I apologize, law, Sotkadim talked up long, Governor of Morobe, but point of order, Blomi, some law word him use him, we feel him unparliamentary click. Also, make him talk to us, German, a little bit insinuation, so me like I may reword him. I'll talk to Blogan so that you may clear him in respect to the parliamentary decorum you may get long. Standing order,
Mr. Speaker, with the greatest respect of Prime Minister, every killing me or seminar, I have to give him the right languages. Not just me, but this country. But Prime Minister, good man, you leader of the country or send me respectfully withdraw him this terminology me use him now on this time.
Thank you, Honorable Governor. The Deputy Speaker hasn't asked you to withdraw, and you have already gone ahead withdrawn, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
You can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Me like him ask him this Minister of Private Enterprise, State Enterprise. Is now belong by you commission him or sanction him one commission of inquiry. Long investigate him. Why you are facing big problem of power inside of this country? You must commission him. You know why you commission him this number one question. Number two question, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Me like him asking private enterprise minister, private or public? State enterprise. You will send his name or send me to me foul. Mr. Minister, this country, MEOs have needing good power and continued supply of the power. Igolong Yumi Olgata. Also, me like asking you, this talk and walk come plenty time, plenty excuse come up. Also, me asking you, enough long you government by talk years long, allow him long this monopoly of power, provisions of power by the PNG power be withdrawn. Now you like talk years long. Some of the power company by coming inside and providing power. Now resist one time PNG power. So you got competition by power by come good or get up in power good now supplying power good loan this country. This country you know need him now if you making stop long and this country you know need him this kind passing long power on power stop power on power stop. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to thank the good Governor of Murray for his important questions, and I appreciate this, the expression of his frustration. But let me say that, Mr. Speaker, I've never lied to Parliament. I've always been full and frank in the way I respond to fellow leaders' questions. What we have is a system of combination of incompetence and issues that have been allowed to remain unattended for a number of years and legacy issues. And not one single minister can try to fix all these problems in one single year or 2 or 3 years. Mr. Speaker, in the case of the question of whether or not there should be a commission of inquiry, the answer is no. It's simply a waste of time. As I indicated earlier to this House, we worked out where the problems are. And over the years, all the governments have tried their best to deal with this issue. And when you have ever-increasing population, the challenge is on the government and especially PNG power to continue to improve and meet the changing times and technological advances and everything. So this is not the first time a government has tried to deal with this issue. For instance, in one of the previous governments, we were talking about trying to solve this issue, and we eventually brought generators all the way from another country, and some of them are still there. We're trying to work our way to try and make use of them. So it's an ongoing issue and a challenge for any government, Mr. Speaker. In relation to the question of whether or not we should allow independent power producers to provide power, yes, things have started. We've now got companies owned by our own people like Diria Power, for instance, New Power, and a Korean consortium in Leh. And with the decision by the Marawi government to set up the Energy Authority, there will be scope and room for other companies who have the expertise and the know-how to be able to come up with their proposals and provide power to various areas in our country. And also, if what we're trying to do now results in positive changes, and when PNG Power is back trading profitably and nicely, this government will then look very seriously at splitting the company into 3 parts that will then be engaged in generation
transmission and retail. So this is an ongoing work in progress. This government is not blind. We are trying our best to fix what is before us. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, our question time has lapsed. Honourable member, question time Luyumi and finish, so but you can sign up tomorrow and check and look you. Thank you. The honourable members, I wish to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery of students of Pacific Institute of Leadership and Governance who are studying diploma in public accounting, Hood Lagoon Primary School in Rigo District, Central Province, Malolo International School National Capital District, and the members of Morobe Provincial Executive Council. On behalf of the Parliament, I extend to the visitors a warm welcome to the National Parliament. We have a ministerial statement. The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I ask Leave of Parliament to make a statement.
Make your statement.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to provide a summary of my recent international engagements, especially the 4 nations that I visited in September, from September 21st to October 5 as a head of government. Those were visits were made in the interest of our country, and I, as part of my duty to inform this Parliament for our country to take note of the visit and the meetings that were held in those visits. Throughout the visits, I was accompanied by the Honorable Justin Chachenko, our Minister for Foreign Affairs, and along with other senior policy officers of the Department of Prime Minister and NEC, especially in the visit to United Nations at New York and the bilaterals with the USA that was held in Washington, D.C. Mr. Speaker, also accompanying me were some members of this Parliament to give them exposure and to know what is happening, so that in their own political career they will be equipped to work not just for the districts or provinces but also for our country. Accompanying me were the Honourable Michael Marum, Governor of East New Britain Province, the Honourable Daniel Tindipu, Member for Komahulia, and the Honourable Benjamin Mool, Member for North Wagi, and the Honourable Kashmir Aya, Member for Koilala. The Honourable Richard Maru, our Minister for International Trade and Investment, and the Honourable Governor Baird and the Governor of East Sepik, and also His Excellency Mr. Sam Abel, Papua New Guinea's Ambassador to Japan, joined me at the Tokyo sector of the State Funeral of Japan's former Prime Minister, the late Shinzo Abe. Mr. Deputy Speaker, my successful visit to the 4 nations commenced with my attendance of the official funeral ceremony of our late Queen Elizabeth II in London, where I also witnessed the ascension of His Royal Highness King Charles III to the throne. I also call on His Royal Highness the King and the new United Kingdom Prime Minister, then Prime Minister rather, the Right Honourable Elizabeth Truss, immediately following the official funeral service or funeral ceremony. Discussions with the King, Mr. Speaker, will focus on forest conservation and Papua New Guinea's continuous linkage to monarchy and the Commonwealth of Nations. In our discussions also, I reaffirmed our commitment to the Commonwealth in this instance. In my meeting also, Mr. Speaker, with Prime Minister Truss, I congratulated her then on her appointment and committed our country to work closely with the British government to strengthen ties in the areas of military and the public service exchanges, the flexible visa arrangements to allow Papua New Guinean citizens ease of travel to the UK. Mr. Speaker, whilst in London also I met the Chief Executive Officer of the SWAI Group of Companies, where we discussed SWAI's business portfolio in Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, for record, this company has been operating in Papua New Guinea since the early 1900s. We spoke in detail about expanding those ties and our government's strong intention to facilitate trade and investment, especially with a focus on diversifying to our downstream centered businesses in our country. Following the London sector, I proceeded to New York, where I attended the 77th United Nations General Assembly and delivered our country's statement. Mr. Speaker, I delivered our country's statement at the UN Plenary Hall on the 22nd of September. I spoke about forest conservation, climate change, Papua New Guinea's ability to shift to industrialization, investing in downstream processing from our natural resources, whilst building greater levels of value added utilizing our vast renewable and non-renewable resources. Mr. Speaker, my introductory remarks to UN 77th General Assembly, I acknowledge the theme that the General Assembly was premised on, especially on peace, prosperity, and sustainability through multilateralism amid the COVID-19 pandemic. I spoke in congruent and complement this theme of United Nations 77th General Assembly. I also spoke to on the heightened climate change threat and increasing socio-economic development challenges that the globe continues to face. I emphasized that the time for talking or rhetoric, especially from the great global industrialized nations, is over. They must put their money where their mouth is, and more action was needed, especially on transformative and concerted global actions that is needed to take the climate change issues head-on, especially the mitigation issues. In my address, I supported the Secretary General's narrative of our common agenda to progress and better understand how we can effectively address issues to deliver on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are the global prerequisites to improve our livelihoods of our people here and elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, I note that Papua New Guinea has made some progress with the Human Development Indexes. This must be documented so that we can continue to measure and assess our own progress and to dispel myths and to actually post what we are doing for our nation. Mr. Speaker, I spoke about our initiatives to improve governance and education for all. I outlined our policies to decentralize health services and improve law and order. I talked about Connect Papua New Guinea and our drive to develop high-quality economic infrastructure such as wharves, roads, airports, to enable economic growth and market access for every Papua New Guinean and our producers. I also outlined our industrialization agenda as we approach our 50th anniversary of independence and beyond, including our desire to become net exporter of both renewable and non-renewable resources through downstream processing. Mr. Speaker, the agricultural sector must be harnessed, particularly at the rural level, through price and freight subsidies and necessary support. We have embarked on this since we started government, and I indicate to the UN that this will be progressed because therein lies our potential to unbundle support to mass of our people, the 60, 70, 80% of Papua New Guineans who are still locked in the rural enclaves. This will empower rural families to sustain their livelihood as a revenue source and contribute to growing our rural economies. I stress that Papua New Guinea is working towards becoming a major supplier of organic primary and fisheries producers to global markets and our nearest neighbor, especially in the Asian marketplace. I also outlined my strong belief that decentralizing government services and functions in the provinces and districts will greatly complement our efforts to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Mr. Speaker, I also used this occasion to call for greater foreign direct investments and economic partnership with many of our bilateral and multilateral partners. These are critical as we seek to progress our development agenda and the creation of special economic zones to support small and medium enterprises and spur our economic growth. I noted that we, for Papua New Guinea, I informed them that we aim as a country to be a 200 billion kina economy by 2030. Our target, I believe, Given the strong economic policies of our government and our focus on diversifying our economic focus, we will achieve that by 2030. On climate change, I emphasize the need for collective action to enable resilience, adaptation, and mitigation through measures that support land preservation and reclamation. Mr. Speaker, I informed the General Assembly that Papua New Guinea is one of the few remaining countries with a pristine tropical rainforest and a major carbon sink totaling over 70 metric tons of United Nations verified sovereign credit plus. I note our intention to bring these credits into the market by the end of this year. Doing so, we will provide significant economic benefit for our nation, whilst ensuring that we retain the critical ecological resources. Mr. Speaker, on the margins of UN Assembly, I met with the Prime Ministers of Israel and Norway. With the Prime Minister of Norway, I informed that Norway has one of the world's best sovereign wealth funds, and we discussed the possibility of also undertaking to replicate in our own sovereign wealth fund a structure similar to the Norwegian experience. And we made undertaking that in the not too distant future, Papua New Guinea sovereign wealth fund and Norway sovereign wealth fund could have an exchange and work to understudy them and work in partnership with them. Mr. Speaker, immediately after UN, I traveled to Brisbane to attend a bilateral meeting with the Australian Prime Minister, the Honourable Albanese, on the sidelines of the annual President 13 rugby league match between our Kumuls and Australian Kangaroo on the 25th of September 2022. At this meeting, we reaffirmed our strong and practical commitment to the existing Papua New Guinea-Australia bilateral partnership and discussed furthering educational opportunities for our citizens in Australian secondary and tertiary institutions. We also spoke of the value that seasonal labour mobility provides to both of our nations and the need to increase quotas to provide more opportunities for our people. I stress the importance of increasing trade and investment and partnerships to support and complement Papua New Guinea's desire to industrialize and become a net exporting economy to generate revenue to support our national budget, as well as meet our domestic consumption and food security needs. Mr. Speaker, my official engagements in Brisbane, when it was complete, I travelled with the Australian Prime Minister. We went and we attended the official state funeral service of the late Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. At my attendance at this sad and solemn event, at this sad and solemn event was a mark of respect to appreciate the late Prime Minister Abe's personal and long-standing commitment to Papua New Guinea. He was a great friend of our nation, and it was appropriate that I was there to pay our final respects. And on the record, if you all would recall, our government secured for the first time almost $1 billion kina from Japan direct to our budget support. That was directly a result of the late Shinzo Abe's warmth towards our country, and we had to pay him respect. The Japanese government, through the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, is investing high-quality infrastructure projects across our nation. These include the Port Moresby Water Sewerage Project, the Najab and Tokua Airport redevelopment projects. Najab at the moment is going full steam. Tokua will come at the back of Najab. And the Papua New Guinea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, United States electrification projects. All of these are legacy of the late Shinzo Abe. The Japanese government must also be commended for providing that $1 billion kina concession loan I alluded to in 2021 at the height of COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, I met with the Japanese Prime Minister, the Honourable Fumio Kishida, where I congratulated him on his appointment and acknowledged the increased and strengthened bilateral relationships in the areas of defence, people-to-people exchange, and continued development assistance. And Japan being a foundation PNG LNG purchaser, I acknowledge their support. I also took the opportunity whilst in Japan to meet other executives of Japanese companies who have interest to operate here in our country, especially in the LNG sector, namely Soljitz, JX Nippon, who is a partner in our LNG project right now, Jax Nippon and Oil and Gas Corporation, and LNG Japan Corporation to discuss development of upcoming gas fields and for them to participate in the downstream processing of LNG and other petrochemical products. Mr. Speaker, after the State Funeral Service in Tokyo, I flew to Washington, D.C. and attended the first ever U.S. Pacific Island Country Summit at the State Department building in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, 28 September 2022. The two-day summit was officially opened by Secretary of State Mr. Anthony John Blinken at the Franklin Roosevelt Room at the State Department building. Mr. Speaker, in his opening remarks, Secretary Blinken welcomed the leaders from the Pacific Island countries and applauded their attendance and supported on issues of common interest. He noted that the inaugural summit was an avenue for Pacific and U.S. leaders to discuss business, trade and investment, climate change, security, and other emerging and existing issues and challenges that are part of the greater Blue Pacific strategy. During this meeting, Secretary Blinken announced the U.S. financial support initiative of around $4.8 billion as part of U.S. Pacific Island Country Partnership. It must be noted that these funds will be allocated based on merit, and this therefore requires that the Ministry and Department of Foreign Affairs analyze and prioritize projects that we can submit for our country over the next 10 years. Mr. Speaker, this was also my first meeting with some colleagues from the Pacific Island countries and the U.S., which included Prime Minister of Fiji, Prime Minister of Solomon Islands, heads of government from Tuvalu, Samoa, Kiribati, Vanuatu, and Federated States of Micronesia and Nauru. During the meeting, leaders noted the need to meet regularly to ensure that U.S.-Pacific Partnership continues to deliver practical results for the region. Mr. Speaker, on Thursday, the 29th of September, I met with the U.S. President, His Excellency Joe Biden, at the White House, where we concluded a declaration on U.S.-Pacific Partnership, which aims to strengthen the U.S.-Pacific Partnership through commitment to bolster Pacific regionalism by addressing and responding to threats such as climate change, natural disasters, and striving to achieve a sustainable regional economic development and growth. Furthermore, the joint U.S.-Pacific Island Country Declaration will guide U.S.-Pacific partnerships and promote sovereignty through mutual trust, respect, transparency, and accountability. Mr. Speaker, my participation at the above international events were very fruitful. They have allowed our nation to forge new partnerships and strengthen existing relationships to ensure practical and positively impact our own development agendas. I am content with the fact that we were able to establish effective dialogue and conversation with some of the world's leading economic powers, and through that we have secured enhanced cooperation and partnership that will complement our own domestic development agenda. In my one-on-one discussions with the heads of government from Australia, Japan, and USA, as well as in our United Nations country statement, I was able to highlight our government and our country's development agendas, which is primarily focused in the first instance to growing a rural economy, basically assisted by an improved service delivery that we are trying to embark upon. I advocated for the realignment of development assistance towards economic infrastructure, downstream processing of a vast renewable and non-renewable resources, and creation of economic zones that will increase revenue streams for our country. This is all well and good, but what remains now is to ensure that the outcomes of my discussions are absorbed into our system and processes and coordinated and implemented by all respective departments and agencies responsible. I call, Mr. Speaker, on all ministers, department heads, and agencies to take note of the matrices emanating from the NEC policy submission on the outcomes of this Four Nations tour and identify issues directly under their respective ambit and ensure that they are properly processed and properly captured in their respective annual work plans, and so convert those good meetings and networking to actual benefit for our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend this paper to the House.
The question is that the question be put. Those in favor say aye. Those against, no. Ayes have it. The Honourable Minister for Health.
Mr. Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to make a statement.
Make your statement.
Mr. Speaker, Honourable Prime Minister, colleague ministers and members of Parliament, a very good morning to you all. Firstly, let me take this opportunity to thank the Marape Rosso government for gracing me with this opportunity as Minister for Health to lead this important life-saving sector. The health sector is an integral part of the social sector and contributes to the greater aspect of human development. On the same note, Mr. Speaker, I would also like to thank the former Prime Minister, Honourable TVWAN, and those before him that have led the health sector with distinction. Mr. Speaker, as my maiden speech, I will be presenting to the floor of Parliament my 100 days plan for the sector and the 18 months thereafter. Mr. Speaker, in health, the need is huge. The population of Papua New Guinea continues to grow at a rate of 2.7% according to the National Census of 2011, with an estimated 9.1 million in 2020 and 12 million by 2030. Mr. Speaker, we may have already surpassed these figures as suggested by remote sensing modeling that have been done in the recent years. We may be within the vicinity of about 13 to 15 million, Mr. Speaker. Health is a right for these people, and government has the constitutional responsibility to provide health care services to its people. As we say in health, health care is from the womb to the tomb. The problems of service provisions will be challenged by the country's growing population, exerting pressure on limited government resources, coupled with challenges to revamp the fragile health system, to be more vigilant in the provision of health, quality health services, and at the same time building a system to endure such pandemics that we have faced recently in the COVID-19 crisis. The COVID-19 stress test exposed how fragile and weak our health system was. Mr. Speaker, there is an urgent need to address priority health issues like family planning to control population growth in this country. Mr. Speaker, we have basically outgrown our capacity to provide for our people, and population control should be a priority of this government, and we will make it a priority of this government. The immunization rate has been low and stagnant over the years, and we require support from other sectors in building roads and bridges in order for our health workers to conduct outreach programs to villages and communities. Added to that is the greater need to focus on the emergence of cancer, trauma and injuries, and mental disorders. Mr. Speaker, if we are to meet by 2030 the Sustainable Development Goals and to achieve the universal health coverage of leaving no one behind, we need an all-of-government approach. This means improved accessibility through our road networks and jetties, increased communication and electricity, building more community water supplies, improved law and order, providing more health-friendly communities, providing good housing, and increasing family economic status. These are all what we call social determinants of health. To address some of the ongoing issues within my Ministry of Health, I will focus on a few key result areas that I would be expected to deliver on. Results may not be achieved as quickly as we all may anticipate, but these are areas I will be prioritizing within the next 100 days in office and, of course, the 18 months. Mr. Speaker, these key result areas are not my own, but derived from the National Health Plan of 2021 to 2030. The main issues identified from this plan are the acute health workers shortage, chronic drug procurement issues, unequal and limited access to health infrastructure and systems, and governance issues. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I have set for myself the following priorities I intend to achieve within the next 18 months as I progress in the sector. Number one, Mr. Speaker, is to help establish mechanisms to achieve the WHO required ratio of health workforce to population, which is 4 to 1,000 people. We have declined from 1.27 per thousand in 2011 to about 0.97 in 2018. Our aim is to increase total number from the current 11,000 to 23,000 by 2030. During a recent HR data cleansing exercise, the total vacancies across the sector is about 10,800, inclusive of both clinical and administrative positions. The NSC approved an additional 5,000 positions to the sector, a gap that was identified during the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, before we can recruit from the additional 5,000, the 10,800 vacancies must be filled. Mr. Speaker, the number of health workers is very important in any health jurisdiction. When you increase the number of health workers, the health indices improve, and it's shown all throughout the world. Mr. Speaker, I will be looking at short-term as well as long-term solutions. Short-term would be to recruit qualified health workforce from overseas if we don't have enough in our country, and increase retirement age only for health workforce. Long-term solutions will be to increase training capacity either through establishment of new health schools in our universities, to increase output to reach the number as envisaged in the National Health Plan. In the short term, Mr. Speaker, my ministry and the National Department of Health require the assistance from the Minister for Public Service and Department of Personnel Management to mitigate the issues with the recruitment process and come up with some immediate solutions to fill in the critical vacant positions. One such measure would be the devolution of powers of recruitment back to the Department of Health. Health workforce is categorized as an essential workforce because it's a life and death issue, and the continual delays at DPM in addressing this huge problem of health staff shortage is of concern to the health sector. In the long term, Mr. Speaker, the NSC approved a standalone medical university that will train all cadres of health workers and must be established from 2023 onwards. I'm happy to say that this government is recognizing the need there and it's prioritizing this. I will commence collaboration with Minister for Department of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology and other relevant stakeholders to progress these possible options. Mr. Speaker, this will definitely take some time, but a clear work plan will be developed to show how we will achieve this. Health is labor intensive, unlike other sectors, and without adequate workforce, health services will be compromised or not delivered to our people. Mr. Speaker, number two, drug procurement. Drug procurement continues to be a big challenge for our sector. Therefore, I will begin a dialogue with the National Department of Health and Development partners to explore options or possibilities to improve drug procurement, either by strengthening the current procurement and supply management system or through outsourcing to a reputable independent authority as a matter of priority, as recommended by the PAC. We have already commenced work on this. It is my plan and hope to ensure the right medicines are procured in the right quality, right quantity and delivered to the right place at the right time during my term in office. In doing so, Mr. Speaker, my first priority in the short term is to ensure that medical supplies and procurement is adequately funded. This year, the National Department of Health is faced with a funding gap of about 142 million. Although a submission of 303 million was requested, the sector only received 200 million. With the carryover liabilities of previous years, the sector now requests a funding gap of about 142 million. The funding shortfall was approved by NSC on the 4th of May 2022. Mr. Speaker, I will now seek to expedite this process with Minister for Treasury and Finance for funding to be made available as a matter of priority. Mr. Speaker, I have revisited the recommendations and outcomes from the Parliamentary Accounts Committee into Medical Supplies Procurement and Distribution Inquiry to progress what has already been done and ensure appropriate actions will be taken to implement the recommendations. And Mr. Speaker, I intend to present the update here for all to see. Mr. Speaker, number three is the increased infrastructure capacity to improve access to health services. Mr. Speaker, in the inaugural speech by the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea to the 11th Parliament on the 9th of August 2022, he aspires to ensure that every village must have a health facility closest to them, every LLG must have a health center, every district must have a hospital, and every province must have a provincial hospital. Mr. Speaker, there are currently 23 hospitals, 18 registered district hospitals, 774 health centers, including urban clinics and community health posts, and 2,494 aid posts, totaling about 3,221 health facilities across the country. From these, only 2,243, which is 70% of the facilities, are open, and about 974 aid posts are closed. My plan and request is to reopen these closed facilities as a matter of priority. Mr. Speaker, all new health facilities and upgrading of existing facilities must be driven by data. It's an important point that can not be understated. Every other new facilities and existing facilities that needs capacity improvement must be driven by data. Studies have indicated a lot of wastage of resources due to health facilities being built through political whim and convenience that are not conforming to national health standards, not fully equipped and no staff to operate these facilities. Mr. Speaker, such practices will be a thing of the past, and I will request the support of all members of Parliament to go by the health standards. All health facility development projects will be controlled through policy or legally entrenched to prevent this great wastage. To begin, Mr. Speaker, I will pursue the implementation of the National Health Service Standards through the development of the Provincial Health Service Plans. This will include the accreditation of health facilities across the National Health Service Standards, assessment of population needs and burden of diseases in the province so that appropriate infrastructure is built to serve the needs of the people. Number 4, Mr. Speaker, improved governance and systems. Mr. Speaker, the health sector has gone through reforms to strengthen and improving health service delivery systems. The key significant reform being the establishment of the Provincial Health Authority for a unified health service delivery in all our provinces. One of my key priorities is to strengthen this major reform by ensuring all relevant legislations are reviewed and amended to remove political interference in the selection of boards so credibility is restored to ensure our people's health remain in good hands. This also goes to the selection and appointment of CEOs. The systems established will have to process candidates and provide a list that will be left for the province to select from, not the other way around. My ministry will continue to support the ongoing system strengthening programs. In fact, we have received support from regional development partners from the WHO to help assist strengthen our health systems, especially in the leadership and management training areas and the public finance management training and system building. Mr. Speaker, in addition, the review of system laws, especially the National Health Administration Act of 1997 and the Provincial Health Authority Act of 2007, will ensure appropriate structures are established to fulfill the mandated functions of service delivery. This reform will look at the regulatory functions to create self-sustaining revenue for health system and continue the public health legislative reviews, amendments and developments. Mr. Speaker, number 5, review and audit all PHAs. Mr. Speaker, absolute power corrupts and there is evidence of widespread corruption in some PHAs throughout the country. It is my intention to review and audit all the PHAs, and I have started in my own province, Anga, to set the precedents for the rest of the country. Gulf, NCD and Western Island PHAs are now being reviewed as we speak. Mr. Speaker, I will continue to do regular updates on the progress of my priorities for the sector as we proceed into my first 100 days in office. We don't have all the answers, nor all the knowledge, and so we will do regular consultations with everyone, including all relevant stakeholders, and this includes all of you leaders in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, we all know that funding is also one of the main issues giving rise to our current predicament, and I will be upright with this. We can't expect miracles to happen if we can't put in more money to make things work. The health of our people is the wealth of our nation. Loss of productivity through illness is a global issue, and we must acknowledge it for what it is. It's not only the cash crops that bring much needed forex, it's the people that make it happen. Finally, but not the least, Mr. Speaker, only 30% of the health challenges can be solved by the health sector through medicines and injections. However, 70% are outside the domain, such as financing, accessibility, power supply, communication, law and order, nutrition, literacy, accessibility to water supply, to community. All these plays a critical role in improving the health of our people. These are what we call social determinants of health. While I do my part, I seek the support of all the sectors to do your part to improve health and the well-being of our people. With this, I thank you all and God bless you all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend this statement to the Parliament.
The Honourable Member for Ijibitari. Honorable member, correction. I'm always remembering your former district, so honorable member for Poponeta.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Thank you again. You recognizing people of Poponeta open. We'd like to thank you, Golo Minister, for health, statement blong emna. We like Sikkim Parliament lo take note lo statement blong emna. We like debating this last statement, so me asking. Me, movers and Parliament take note now. People are debating.
Thank you. Make your speech.
Okay, thank you. Before me commend him, Minister Blo Health, let me take this opportunity to recognize statement Blo Prime Minister and talk thank you lo all visits Blongem were all very important visits I make him lo meet one time or some important line lo Narpla country, particularly people in status of presidents now, prime ministers now, all this line, all important meetings where prime minister he goes. So I like congratulate him, prime minister lo undertake him this la, lo try him lo create him bilateral agreements now, bilateral discussions, lo help him country blow yumi. Now me like encourage him all ministers where particularly all areas where prime minister me engage one time all Narpla foreign prime ministers na president, all ministers lo take note lo this all important discussions and departments to take note of those discussions and to progress those discussions to a point where we can start exporting to those countries that where we having bilateral discussions one time. So me like commending Prime Minister on his successful trip. Lo 100 days statement lo Minister Blo Health, that's very important, and I would like to encourage all ministers to deliver their plans to this house so me can debate him naharem what their plans are. Plans are important. Plan sets a pathway for every organization, even right down to an individual. Without a plan, we are bound to fail. So plan gives us a guidance on what we need to achieve as an organization or as a country. So those particular guidelines that Minister Miauti Miamamas. So I want to encourage other ministers to partake in those important guidelines where Minister Miauti departments blow so that we can all participate in those key areas. Lo side long health is important. It's so important for the well-being of our country. I'd like to thank you, Minister Lo. These are important areas by you addressing. In the last term of Parliament, as a member for Ijibitari, we found it that it was difficult to try and address all the sectors. So what we did was that we put a plan in place and we addressed one sector at a time. And in the last term of Parliament, we set out to achieve about focusing strongly on our health within our district. And within that period of that 5 years, we went out and we built a number of aid posts. We even went to the point that we upgraded or refurbished 2 of our health centers. We even purchased a 1 million kina water treatment plant for our St. Margaret's District Hospital as part of our effort to build our health facilities and infrastructure to ensure that we provide the best health for our people. We even went to the extent to buy sea ambulances for our coastal communities. We bought land ambulances for all our health centers to make sure that we are able to provide the necessary service to our people. So this la work Mipla make him in the 5 years. Now, what we realized is that whilst we are building all the health facilities, now providing all the logistics to move people from the health centers or aid posts to the hospitals, one plus something Mipla find him is that there were 2 things that were missing in this entire system where Minister Emi addressed him inside of speech program. Number 1 is medicines or medical drugs. Number 2 is the health workers on the ground. Lo side long lo medical drugs, the medicine, we always use the, or plenty of talk lack of drugs in the country, but that's not true. In fact, if you go to a medical health store in Ley, medical health store in Port Moresby, Bayu Panimosem, there is a lot of medical drugs in those facilities. But it's our ability to get those medical drugs and medicines to our aid posts, to our health centers, to our hospitals. That is our biggest problem here.
And if we cannot get these medical drugs and medicines to our aid posts and health centers, I guarantee you that you will find them being sold on the streets. People are taking advantage of our lack of ability to get the medicines to the drugs. Now, man work stealing, or there is a syndicate within that system where only work routing drugs, these medical facilities, and getting them to the streets and then selling them. Some of these medicines that have been sold are outdated medicines, posing medical threats to the people who are buying these things. Doctor and good minister, we have the medicine in our country. What we should be looking at is how best can we utilize our systems we have. If the systems in our country, if our people that run hire car companies that deliver these medical drugs cannot do this, then let's look outside. Let's source somebody to do this delivery of our medical drugs properly. We are dealing with our people's lives. Now, in the last term, we've been carrying one business, one Australian company. We've been introducing former Minister of Health. And we carrying one proposal come where I believe it would have addressed a lot of our supply chain issues within the country of delivering medical drugs to our people. And the idea was to use drones. Defense, high-tech drones that they use by the US military using. They were going to use the drones to deliver the medical drugs in our country. And these medical drugs would be kept in their facilities. In other words, we don't pay for the medical drugs. They store the medical drugs and they only invoice us when they deliver the medical drugs to our people. And this is a high-tech way of delivering medicine. So what they would do is they would use drones and GPS. And then they would then say, example, housing, health center, aid post, renim, this facility na talk. We have somebody with a snake bite, we need medicine within the next 30 minutes. And with the technology they have, they can deliver medicine within 2 to 20 minutes, depending on where that location is. And because it's GPS, they will put the GPS, one time this parachute na, put him on top of this drone na, carry him go to this place where man need him. And then drop the parachute and it will drop at the specific spot where the GPS mark him. They get the medicine, treat the patient, and we save a life. These are high-tech, but we can utilize it to our advantage. Why? Because we don't have roads, we don't have airstrips, we don't have tracks. We can use technology to solve many of these problems. Me Karim Golo Minister, it got lost somewhere along the line, and new Minister of Health, me like Karim come back to you to look at this proposal. Why? Because our people's lives are important. If we use simple things like this, I believe we can address a lot of the issues faced in our aid post health centers and hospitals. Where drugs is not an issue, we have them in the country, but it's our ability to get it to our people that need it at the most. So, Minister, you also addressing issue belong the level of our health workers is dropping. True. But let me give you a good example. Last year, me give him some money go St. Margaret's medical school. But that money is not sufficient to keep that school running. So they closed mid this year, and it's still closed. So if you are talking about training more people, why are these medical facilities or training institutions shutting down? That's our biggest problem. Thinking that there are certain institutions where they are important to, like health, for example. Rausim long higher education and pack it with health, and it becomes your full responsibility not only to put them into the housing, but you train them and you get them into the health centers. Maybe that's one way of solving the problem we have. I'm just thinking, Minister. So I believe, my good minister, if we can address these issues through these simple methods, I believe we can solve a lot of our problems. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Pomio.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. On this side, we would like to support the statement made by the Minister for Health today. It's very, very important. Health is an important concern for all of us. All our members must take ownership of the health of our own people and making sure that we comply with the National Department of Health standards and other things. So, thank you, Minister. He presented his 100 days plan, which is about 18 months plan for what we'll be doing for health sector in our country. We can say that the health is an ongoing challenge, and we will from this side will support what the government is doing. It's an ongoing challenge, but we will make sure that we try our best to support the interventions that he has put forward. I'm going to talk 2 plus something. First is we are happy to hear about the review on the Provincial Health Authorities Act of 2007. I kept saying that it's an important area that we need to look at, but especially the regulation that specifically specified section 56 or 57 that talks about the regulation of the PHA Act. It's an outstanding matter that needs to be addressed. At the moment, we have the chairmen of the PHA board who do not have any clear communication direction, or how do they report or they interact with the governor of the provinces. And something where not very clear at the moment. So, something where we need to look him clear. The Minister of Health want them secretary belong him need him clear communication. Want them chairman belong PHA board, na CEO belong PHA. Something clear to us, which we believe that if we see or we can improve that in the regulation, which specifically required along Section 57 of the PHA Act. We were with the Department of Health and we were discussing this, but we'd like to see if the minister can actually come forward and let us know whether this has been done or not. Secondly, I'd like to support the government in the position to say that all our LLCs in Muscat health center, now got the districts in Muscat district hospitals, now got the province in Muscat on the provincial housing. That's why we be health standards. Me like making sla tuk na support him. And I give him like example, come back long NCD, National Capital District. I will ask him also, today you serve all district, the districts that we make at low NCD, you may serve all district housing blow stop away. I may ask him a question, he go to Platiland, don't serve also, we do not know where the district hospitals are. If we say that the Gary Hospital is the provincial hospital for NCD, it does not meet the standard. It doesn't meet the standard for level 5 for a provincial hospital, We acknowledge the fact that there are many specialized SMOs or medical officers now only staff work Gary staff. They actually wasting the manpower skills there. Plant line through only staff lab now only fully utilizing skills belong. Plant surgeons only staff lab. Plant logman where only train go through only staff lab. Now they actually wasted some manpower there. So me ask him how good the team from the PHA team work one them Department of Health now get the systems in order. Get the NCD health system actually, maybe Minister of Health now even though it's actually chaotic. Because if you go to PMGH now, as you speak now, today, I'm the specialist, I'm the doctor lab describing situation of PMGH at the emergency department, the outpatient department also, it's like a war zone. It's like a war zone. Now, PMGH is supposed to be a national referral hospital. Now we must shift teams to start to look at specialized skills or specialized areas like kidney, transplant, and looking at now somebody, the CEO is coming up with a very good facility like addressing cancer, which are actually killing thousands of our citizens every year in our country. Now we look at this all the specific areas. Now they are now still burdened and bombarded with many of our people with really sick. Really headband or really scratch or really body. The hospital that comes into their mind is PMGH. The PMGH is supposed to be addressing only the referral cases going through the system. So as I think the good CEO, Dr. Molome, is doing his best, but I actually had a meeting with some of our doctors there, although they actually stressed out. Stressed out because the NCD health services that need to have their own district hospitals, where all sick man must go to slap past them, and then I'll give them referral letter and I go to PMGH. That's not happening. So I call on the PHA team of the NCD, have all our systems in order, so that we can relieve the burden that is now at the PMGH CEO or the hospital staff there. Now we focus on providing this good service where they are supposed to be providing as a level 6 super specialist training hospital for country. Suppose Tesla come up, and by still we can talk about health, the cancer facilities. We now have a very good system of the heart facility now there. Where before online we get the blockage long outreach, heart only can go long Australia. But now I can say that they are now doing it at PMGH, and we want to go down this path. We want to go down this path. We need to talk about the new interventions of healthcare in our country, and we need to allow PMGH to actually be relieved of this. Now, let them concentrate on what they can do, addressing the overall healthcare. So, we support him. Our good minister is doing very, very well. In terms of health, we are with you. We are supporting you in every aspect of what you're doing. But let's address some of these things. I again call upon the team from NCDPHA to see what they need to do. Coming back to the central province must have their own hospital. The Gulf province must have their own hospital. All of these things, they also come to PMGH and giving unnecessary pressure. Me believe also on behalf of PMGH CEO na Samuel Kuplol, Dr. Spluimi, we only come looking at the side na talk about this or something. Me asking also, let's address all these things so that again PMGH is given that rightful the opportunity to try to address the important things that they can do as a level 7 National Referral Hospital, so level 6 National Referral Hospital. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Governor of Morobe.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I thank you for the leave that you granted me to speak on the issue of the presentation of the Minister for Health's statement. Secondly, I want to thank the Minister, very good Minister. You're a doctor yourself, a medical doctor yourself. You're a professional man in that field of medication and hygiene. And you're the best man in the business to take charge of that ministry and to make sure that ministry provides its function by providing medication to the people, and similarly so to provide the policy or the opinions to the doctors and any other people working in the medical profession. So I commend you. Overall, the substance of your presentation has been very useful for the consumption and digestion of the members of the Parliament. And I want to thank you, first of all, Mr. Minister, for making that presentation. I've got a couple of matters which I wish to raise before this Parliament based on your presentation. First of all, that is in relation to population. Population. There is no doubt in this country, Papua New Guinea, that the people are producing people in an alarming rate without consideration for the future of those people whom they are producing. Mr. Speaker. And these are human beings that they're being produced. They had needs for consumption, food, accommodation, the education, all of those things, Mr. Speaker. Minister, it's not that in this country that we're shortage of land. Not at all, Mr. Speaker. We got enough land available for which, if we are industrials, we can work hard to produce food to sustain ourselves. But there are, with the greatest respect, particularly the people living in the cities and the town, unfortunately, the kids or the people living there are living on the people who are working. Very people are working, right? And majority of the people are living on the people who are working, whatever they can provide. And Mr. Speaker, see in this country, is there's so many people, families are unable to physically feed the kids that are being produced. Consequently, there is a problem, Mr. Speaker, in this country, very, very serious problem. This is one of stunt. That is, as the doctor described, you must have a balanced food to make sure that physically you are okay, physically you are strong, and make sure that you have a protein to make sure that there is a production of, what do you call it, Doctor, you know it. Make sure that that we are our body is is growing or healthy, and then secondly, you must have a food which provides vitamin to make sure that in the event that you have sickness, then you have that food which provides vitamins there to fight against any diseases that you confront. Now, what is happening in this country, Mr. Speaker, and the Health Minister, is a great problem of stunt. People are eating one type of food too much than other food. And they think that they consume enough food to sustain themselves, Mr. Speaker, but not. And as a result, the people in this country are growing small. And I get so scared of seeing one day a dwarf, I just throw my hands and he just dies off. I get scared of one stage, we're going to come to that stage. And that is caused by stunt, not consuming enough food. People think they're growing big, but no, they're growing small. And that is not as full. In the past, when we had plenty of food, even in the olden time, in the immemorial, the people had plenty of food, the population was small, and there was enough food to consume, and to make sure they grow to big sizes like the people you see in Fiji and Samoa and other parts of the country, but Tonga. And in 1969, when we have the rugby team, we beat the Fijians, by the way, in the rugby union. You see, but today you can't, because the human beings in this country are stunted. They're not eating well. And therefore, that's the biggest problem, Mr. Speaker, that I see. And I'm sure, Mr. Minister, this is, I can categorize as one of the sickness, even worse than HIV, put it that way. And so, Mr. Minister, I hope that you will address this problem, carry out enough sufficient campaign throughout the country, Papua New Guinea, to tell the people not to produce so many kids. Be considerate about how many they can produce and how many they can sustain and look after them and grow up and big sizes, not the ones that we see today. And I'm very, very scared. I'm very scared to see so many dwarfs around here in this country. So I hope, Mr. Minister, that with you as a minister, will carry out those things, Mr. Campaign. Number two, Deputy Speaker, Morobe is a big country within a country. Not we try to separate ourselves from PNG, no, but a country, the English slang, the big country there. There are about over 1 million people there in the Morobe province. And Morobe is a very difficult country. We are separated by mountains, big mountains. We are separated by big rivers, tough rivers. We are separated by big seas, tough seas. And people have to live in the pockets of the mountains, right there on the island. They don't want to come out because that's the land which their forefathers had given to them. They feel proud to be living there. And it's our obligation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's our obligation to make sure that we deliver the medicine to our people. It's our obligation. And Minister, I can see that you are endeavoring best to make sure that that is achieved. And Mr. Minister, for your information, there are so many Morobians who are educated at the health training centers like Butaweng and other medical centers in the province. And they are qualified and more than qualified to serve the rural people of Morobe, right in the mountains, on the island, Kunai, everywhere. Difficult, but that's their place. They'll have to live there and to make sure the medication is provided to the people. And what is happening, Mr. Minister, is that the personal management department is not making sure that those people who are qualified are employed. That is the biggest problem now. And so many young girls and boys will get qualified, and they're energetic, they want to make sure they deliver service in the area of medication to the people, but they're not employed, Mr. Speaker. And I want to propose to you, Honourable Minister, to take it up with the Secretary for Health and to the personal management to make sure that those people are employed. Those people are on the payroll in the public services system, so that they will provide medication to the people of Morobe province. And I can speak for Papua New Guinea, but if there is anything similar going on like that in Morobe province, surely my speech, my concern that I raise in the Parliament will benefit them, Mr. Speaker. But I'm just talking for Morobe. And as I said, Morobe is a big country. Like it or not, it's a big country. The population is 1 million. We need population for the Solomon Islands and the Fiji. Secondly, last of all, Mr. Minister, with the greatest respect to you, I want to raise the matter in relation to the cobalt machine. Cobalt machine. When I was the governor in 2009, I raised the matter with the minister, as he then was at the time, Peter Butter, to purchase the cobalt machine and have it stationed in the Angao General Hospital, for that machine to be utilized to dictate people with cancer or people who are likely to get cancer. This machine, as far as I know, were purchased, were installed in the Angao General Hospital. But the utility, Mr. Speaker, the utility of that machine has not come into place. The machine is just sitting there. And the mothers are dying, Mr. Minister, with the greatest respect. The mothers are dying. They come to me. I live in the block. They come to me. They have cancers. Cancer below susu, cancer below bilum below pikinini. They come to me and they cry. Governor, me by die now, yeah. How are you by die now? I asked them and I said, look, I go down to Angao to be detected for the severe pain that is going through me. And I suspect it's a cancer. But the doctor told, come back next day, come back and say, wait a And eventually I hear of them, so their stories that they have passed away. What a sad story, Mr. Speaker and the Minister. Please make sure that that cobalt machine comes into operation, because the utility of that machine will save the mothers. There's no question about that. Utility of that machine will save the mothers. Mothers are the one, the ladies are the one who got all sorts of cancer. Dr. you sabe. Okay, man me plan the cancer, thank you. But the ladies, they got plenty of cancers there. And they need to be, Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, they need to be dictated. Many mothers from Makam, many mothers from Pindu, many mothers from Minyamia, they're flocking into Angao to be tested. But they cannot be tested because that machine is not working. It's not working. They said, we need the International Organization on Radiation is going to approve that machine. I said, how long are we going to wait? How long are we going to wait for that machine is to be authorized, is to be legalized, to be utilized to make sure that we attend to the mothers who are suffering from cancer. Doctor, I trust you. You're a doctor. The Prime Minister has made a right decision. He has made a right decision. With all due respect to other people who are not medically qualified. He has appointed you. You are medically qualified. That is your job. God has given you, that is your job. And you are sitting on the right chair, and you're sitting on that old chair to making sure, Mr. Speaker, answer to that cobalt machine. Get the United Nations or whoever that is to approve the utility of that machine, and we can use that. And Mr. Minister, I hand it over to you. I have every trust and confidence in your ability to make sure that that machine will come into operation for the use. And finally, Angao is a referral hospital. It's a referral hospital. It's got all the line people on Sipi, or line people on Medang, or line people on New Guinea Islands, or line people on Oro Popondeta, or line people on islands. One Zoligar cancer, or the Kamlo Angao. Now, Mr. Amamas Romas Kamlo Angao. come long go. That's all. Minimum months long today, long talks out, you know, me talking finish. Machine, you know, work good. Sorry, machine, you know, work. The doctor is there. The Indian doctor is there. He is qualified to operate this machine. He is there, but the machine cannot be used because of international law on radiation. That is why that machine cannot operate. But doctor, I trust you. You will make sure that that machine will work and save all the mothers who are coming from Papua New Guinea, going to Angao to be checked for all sorts of cancer and to be treated for that disease. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me at this point in time to speak. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Ambudi Traikiki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Give me time, blow. Member from Ambudi Traikiki, I'll make it talk. Thank you, Minister for Health. Couple of persons in Wakim. Plan your line to talk finish law, talk to health. Me just like 80 dollars. Plan the way, me talk now, me talk to law. Nubla housing, nubla machine, nubla got something lost 30 life must have long time. Minister, me highlighted the well. On the area, we will government is spending 80% of the budget on curative health. Plan the problem is primary health, where 20% or 10% of the money is been given to primary health, which is the bigger problem inside Papua New Guinea. If we can address the primary health issue, then we will not build many hospitals, we will not buy many equipments. And this is the failure in this country. Minister, you in the prevention is better than cure. Maybe like a plan, the Public Health Act and stuff. Kind of a Pure Food Act, Cemetery Act, Alcohol Act, Occupational Safety Act. This is all the law and stuff. But you know enforcement. It used to be very effective in the 80s and 70s. Political interference come in. Bloody politicians own in business. Bloody politicians own him kaipa. Bloody politicians own him liquor shops. They've inspecting on what I'm standing from me. I'm blessed from me. I'm housing from me. And quality of health they drop. Now somebody look good. Plenty of street now man made something. Spit boy not nothing. Trauma skin boy not nothing. People everywhere. Where quality? We need to improve the quality of this place by providing the quality service. That's why we like long time. Why people need literacy. And Department of Health need to put enough money for public health, for stopping this kind of something. Plenty man now selling flower balls on the street. Or selling on the street. Minister, is there quality in there? Or do you see enough standard of cooking flower balls? The biggest problem is quality and look nice like a plenty man. But where it is produced, where it is made, that's not a problem. All working quality water supply, house cook and clean, these are things that are lacking. That's why plenty of sick in local Papua New Guinea. It's not natural sick from Papua New Guinea. It's an imported diseases. It came through our behavior. It came through our attitude. I'm adding on. Plenty of Papua New Guinea man made it something look good. Only part hurry up, but only die young. Simply because there is no quality. Minister, like we have to talk about parliament. If you want to live longer, we have to prevent the source. And how do we prevent it? We have all the laws regulated, but there's no enforcement. There's no enforcement. Simply because politics can come in, business can come in, private can come in, work can stop, plenty money and die. So we will not stop spending money on building new hospitals, buying new machines. This will continue because population is increasing. It is about time we need to address this issue. And we have to prevent it from the source so that there's less problem. Life live longer and we enjoy the life. I'm making a contribution from me. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Justice.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Me too, me like to thank you, long Minister, long bringing this statement. Important along this country. Health, education, and one of two key policies below this government. Now, me like to thank you, long Prime Minister, and Deputy Prime Minister too. Long this government me looking also only literally put him 100 million aside long hospital. Also me like funding hospitals. And I talk thank you long Prime Minister also district hospitals, Olgra district Masikat hospital. Olgra mani non ab kam lo hospital sol. Olgra mani non ab golo leita sol. Olgra mani non ab golo again. All major centers tas all. All service got district belong all. District hospitals must billing. So me talk thank you long Prime Minister long this initiative me take him long end. All man is tablo place. We said man, we said to get money long end by all. All no got money, all no got car. He had long go long big place city. Christian service. Also me talk thank you long Prime Minister long. Making Prime Minister and this government making possible long. At least Sambla district by got district hospitals along this time. Only got district hospitals is up. And then by only improving, you know, not by got big money. So Sambla mibla ino got long end, mibla can get him district hospitals. Online blow mibla die nothing. Only no like tram long go long how sick, he no got money, he no got PMB fares, only die nothing. So a good play long, we must bring him in services he go back long. Whenever Bolman Mary stop long end. Secondly, me like to thank you long. Member Lopomio long contribute him 500,000 long Cancer Foundation complete him. Me am taking first step. Now all honorable member aste all contribute. Now me one bla long imbongo mi bla masave or sem referral hospital imbongo funds me contributing 500,000 go long Cancer Foundation. Me like all complete him. Me referral hospital. All man all come lo yeah. You me must complete him one plus something. You me must you know can kiss him all kiss him ikona. You all narla legally something make him the soul. Important also you me must complete him one block project or one block hospital. So one block all money contribute him stay long and me like talk thank you long. Good blood thing. Suppose member of parliament, so you make him 10 million. So 1 million you will contribute. Then 118 million. You make one player, you can come up with one big project. So you mean no thing also sectional interest, legal interest. Me come along and by me call on this place. This legally something, no thing small. You mean must think a big plan, a meeting or same. You may contributing 1 million each, and then you make a better hospital. Thinking most people lay past them. Now you may kiss him some facilities where you may put him. You may get report him or man lo come. And no man referral hospitals. So meeting of them, you may remember I got obligation along. You may contribute him 1 million each. Long this time you can contribute. You can come up with some blood foundation or kidney problem or all this. You must make him enough long. All money come. Why we should go to Australia? Why we should go to Philippines? Location treatment. You make up on doctors. You make up survey. That's all. It's simply because me plan to use him funds right. You may not put him where the mouth is. You must put him money. One of my way it matters. So you mean no can make him some spirit legally money run. Kiss him all place now. You mean like make him empire something you know up. You mean like him now. You mean must all must boom one plus something come. As the saying goes, Rome was never developed overnight. Slowly you mean make him empire you mean come up him. That's all. You mean not make him more same. You mean by stop yet. Money die yet. Money got money long and go overseas. You mean lose long and in your nap. I'll say not lose yet. I'll say not me like talk or same. Good play long. You mean must put him sample money. So me in the recommendation for me like look him or same. Must you mix him 10 million. 1 million you must put him make him 118 million. Walking one plus something. You mean no can kiss him legally money go not long way up. Mosby must come up number one. Lay must come up past them. Bian Rabal, Hagen, Wogi Mogi Molton, these are major centers. Hospital where how people can easily access to it. One time this la, me like make him legally contribution long and tasol. Also, me bla member must think also. You me got money, you me talk low, you me like his development. Road and bridge will not help. And hospital, you me like deal him. One bla hospital, you me must deal him, finish him. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Central Bougainville.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Take this opportunity. My contribution before me in keeping all thinking I said law minister statement on two ministers, Prime Minister and Health Minister. Me like taking this opportunity and long congratulate, long thank him all of voters, especially the Central Bougainville, the Parliament, or this term. And we thank him all on giving this mandate or this term. And on top of that, we like to thank him taking this opportunity, thank him Prime Minister. Usa temili lablo yumi long this term, the Parliament. Thank him also congratulate him. Thank him too. Acknowledge him, Deputy Prime Minister too. Me like recognize him, opposition belonging, Deputy Opposition Leader, and all the ministers, members of Parliament, all line belong Parliament to me. Even look long all two whole staff you me. Okay. Long talk me long display long past time Prime Minister's presentation long display statement long in. I think me give him credit to Prime Ministers who said they present him all statement long or display time long end. I mean important will contribute so much in the direction of the government of the day. Long walk about you me long end. So me thanking Prime Minister, especially given look Sabel or display paper me present him. We, Papua New Guinea, we are part of the global family. We are members of the family, of global family, and we have connectivity with other countries long walkabout Yumi long end. So this make him Prime Minister, make him one time on popular nations, so this time and make him important through the big something Yumi Papua New Guinea benefit long end. Benefit long end. And plenty time on the countries come inside long country blow you me. They give what they want, they get what they want from us. But I think is Prime Minister making me go outside and let's open to other countries what we can give as a potential Papua New Guinea nation. We go along all and me make him big plus something. And me clarify important inside long walkabout long you me long end. So once again, me give him look Sabel display important walkabout na trip long walkabout long popular nations here, and we making big me believe and we making big impact. One time connection blow yumi connectivity. One time Papua New Guinea, one time on other countries. Lo display time. Okay, come lo talk lo health. Me admiring minister and arranging activity yesterday, lo yumi behind long session lo parliament. Ken Foundation lo present him. Na me admiring just big work. Me give him me present him. Na message me kiss him. Me important through long walk about long Papua New Guinea especially and Kenya and one long all area and seek and me all. Papua New Guinea and me play kissing long plenty time. So I think this plan me been admiring and me right minister and me capable and by end of him lo this term long and also minister of health lo about me experience long and work experience long and long health health background long and by giving big contribution and through long term ministry belonging inside of this department. Okay, on top of this work about belonging and work along police statement belonging. Me looking at most especially me talk about Bougainville, especially one area, and me apply look belonging and administration, administering management belong house can be especially me look long central. Long establishing board health board inside Longen so that all can look out him work long health inside Long Haroa na maybe lo buka all display me important especially all the doctors must concentrate to focus on work long all sick man Mary now all naraply must all administration must stop long narapla all board yet you look out him na control him, na manage him affairs long and all about all our sick doctors and nurses continue long concentrate long 7 all sick man Mary come long our sick long life long on so that in one area may look him inside of health and if need long improvement maybe inside long you may all get inside of Papanikini na more yet to be looking inside of central that is a priority area long. Me longin me put to attention to the Minister for Health for this place. And they wanted this plan short part talk. Me talk. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for North Wagi.
Deputy Speaker, thank you, Lok Sawalomi. Thank you, Minister of Health. You give him one good report. Health play me, country play me. That's all I me like to talk long. Management. We say through by management. Health. Now sick play me. If we total putting plenty money in current plenty sanding camp to solve. Milling was a management. Management health. 8 posts. Na health centers lo country lo imi. Em nogat one le man lo management here. Meeting also we must privatization. Privatization health centers. The hospital. Na even give lo one organization long. Look at him. Na imi staff long. Pande mana look sawa na current report dikam na imi talk. Plus plenty lo imi all plenty work staff na then you put the money and then you sakon and disturb lo health na one san you starting ko lo place na this le em something say bagrap na me thing also you must give him church lo you long health housing na it post lo you go lo church all churches em all staff lo all get up inside lo bush na town all get up em all staff Gabon agency you know staff lo all get up lo Papua New Guinea all staff lo yellow Mosby town all staff lo Agen town all staff lo Ley town now when of something come inside lo bush he got marasin or you know got marasin he got doctor staff or you know got doctor staff all ausik workman staff or you know staff ausik buruko bagrabo nubla em not one the man government man workman go staff na looking lo staff place na come report you meet to here you meet to lo yellow wagen it all you meet to lo yellow wagen it all em by finish here we say true by call boost through na give marasin na working ausik na working work something em no got man by go em church em by go church em staff long all get up inside lo boost inside lo warat one of my baby no na go long em all go government work money all karim ambulance card na government card na run long town here you meet to lo put in big money lo sick na you meeting life lo man we say true is a consent through life lo man no got one la public servant is a consent lo life lo man mo church tas all sa consent now lo yellow Papua New Guinea church em go pass lo what education na health and now you by me one something health 8 posts now one something now you meet talk you mean give management lo church all church you can manage him something. Now you may stop here working policy, selling money, selling marasin, selling sani go to church. Now church, by stop on the ground. Lo manage him na all man by him service. Now I'm all by look at him here. I'm all not too late, all by look at him. Sigle procedure, sick no good stuff, by look him. All church line here by look him, all by call him go through here. Give marasin, not all by all him straight. We said government by workman by go now him now. Give marasin. No got here, all by staff long straight. Not talking about workman, look, carry him dead body come and put him inside ambulance. Now you meet all planning something like yellow country like me. Even like education, health, and church him some go pass. Now church him been first line lo karim church now see come. Now you like some responsibility lo all got. Now by me giving back lo church. Now when I'm sending him stop na mill. When I'm sending him sit down na mill. Him sit down stop here. Bible him come stop. God him come stop inside finish. Now you will not give one less something big, Lord God. Lord take him responsibility. Bible him sit down nothing stop. You will not give one less something, Lord God. Now church, now school, you may give him back, Lord. School now house sick, you may give him back, Lord church. Lord look at him. Now you make him service, now you stop. You may total a big less something. You may arrange you what as all. You may put him almost a million, almost 1,000. Working big house sick. When him something, you may work him now, but you put him on dog here. All man by come na kay na go. All by na staff lo luat him. All this love million sandi mi spending lo yan. All by na make him to church household church. You mean give him health services you go back lo church. Or no got me privatization na give him lo one organization long run him. Na you make some service. No good you make him na you put him humbly me all kada go na all man no some service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Nipa Kutubu.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Lord, give me time. May like take him this time, Lord, talk thank you. Lord, Minister of Health. Also, on the doctor, Lord, House. May like talk thank you, Lord, Prime Minister, Lord, this time give this ministry, Lord, one the doctor. May got strong plan, a big of faith. That Minister of Health, now I may sit down and me the right person. We said by addressing plenty all health issues to make out the country you me. Thank you long aste. Me play stop long government function room na plenty all presentation by the Port Moresby General Hospital staff only can make him. Me like talking house na country. Also Port Moresby General Hospital let me level 7. Specialist na teaching hospital Blayumi. Time been established school or this time I've been taking about 15 years or so go pennies. Now me can talk you me also this house get me transform over the last 13 to 14 years now. Me talk thank you long. All government also put in investment going to this facility. Now also private investments also Kumul Petroleum Holdings. Want administration long and he put in plenty money go inside. Long display housing. Now you make got interventional cardiology mixed up, where you got heart attack or you got some blood blockage long artery blood heart blow you can go, or even if you know got some blood blockage, you can go check him. And all can tell him you whether or not you got blockage artery blow and they can intervene. Now straighten you. This like an intervention and you know been stopped before. And plan the old PNG citizens who go to Philippines, now go to Singapore, Australia, can help. Now you may say wasting plenty money. Now plenty money die, so me look along this public private partnership, only make him help. I'm sure cancer facility too, only building stuff and only work long looking sample intervention long kidney too. So level Port Moresby General Hospital and come up the desired level 7 facility that you may like him. So thank you long all management long Port Moresby General Hospital and the board na Kumul Petroleum Holdings and of course the government for standing behind this hospital. One play issue long health, long country play me look him and staffing issue. We may got the School of Medicine and Health Sciences and staff, but I may attest long University of Papua New Guinea.
That is why every year I'm also producing maybe 45 to 50 graduates. Now, that is not enough for our expanding population. You make our population growth about 2 to 3%. Every year you make 200 to 300,000 people we're adding to the country, but the number of doctors we are producing every year is not enough. Not enough. And we need to look at seriously addressing this issue. You know, what you make Karamal doctors law outside, they come inside. I also want to mention there's about 46 or so doctors. You may have opinions only go contest the election, but because the law you may pass him, only have to go back to the system and only stop. You know, these are critical workers. So what do? We have critical shortage of workers, health workers, especially in this country. And if it means for us to have a standalone university for this country, medical university, we need to consider doing that. I'm sure there's a proposal somewhere there, but I hear that UPNG Karam, I think NEC or School of Medicine, Health Sciences, go to court or something like that. So we need to clear this path so that we can have enough health workers for this country, for a growing population. The other issue, the provincial health authorities. Some provincial health authorities are working, others are not working. It depends on the people that are in the chair. And the issue with the way only setting up the Provincial Health Authority Act, the provincial hospital CEOs only come up CEO block PHAs, and they report to a board. And the board then reports to the health minister. Now, I don't see how the health secretary comes in, maybe operationally or functionally, how the report to the health minister, and there's a missing link there. So this house, this time, with the leadership of the health minister, we need to pass the PHA regulations. I think there's a missing link. We don't know what the PHAs are doing. They are not regulated properly. There is no direct intervention from the health NDOH, because the PHA CEO doesn't report directly to the health secretary. They report to a board, and the board reports to the health minister. So we need to start looking at the regulation as to how we look at the way the PHA is set up. The next issue, electoral long and long procurement and supply chain system law, especially the health sector law country below me. I also want to remind the House and the country that we have heard about this wastage or so of medical supplies that have been sitting around for about 6 months because of the contracting issues, one time all supply chain companies. We need to look at this 100% medical kit. This is a 100% medical kit here. It consumes about 25% of the entire NDOH budget every year. And that's a lot of money. And currently we use what we call the push system. In the push system, there's a certain amount of package that the contracted company is supposed to supply to the health centers and the aid post. And they do that maybe 3 or 4 times every year. And it is supposed to estimate to supply about or save about 5,000 persons. What I see on the ground in the health centers and the aid posts is that there is a lot of wastage. Most of the medical supplies that are being sent are not being utilized properly because most of the time the people don't need it or they don't know how to use it. But we keep pushing it down, and you go to the health centers and aid posts, let me ask you, blogger leaders, go and check them all. They will have so many of this stuff expiring and sitting there. And who's paying for it? We are using public funds to pay for it, and the only way I see, the only person benefiting out of this system are the persons who are supplying it. There are people are paying for unnecessary goods that are being pushed down the system, and the supplier is laughing and going to the bank while we're having issue in the aid posts and health centers. They are trying to find out how to discard these things because they don't know how to use it. Or they don't need it too. So we need to go back and look at what are the real contents of this 100% health kits. And do we really need it at this time? It started since 2014. Now I'm on 2022. That's about 8 years, and we've been doing these things without a review. Our review is mandated at this time so that we buy what we need So we need to go back to the, instead of the push system we are using, we should go back to using the pull system. So the health centers and aid posts order what they need and we supply. There are issues like total boards. You go to America, they have the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. You go to Australia, they have what they call the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Administration. In this country, we have a lot of junks, medical supplies coming to this country without being checked. Whose job is that? The health boards. We have the National Health Board, we have the Pharmaceutical Board, we have the Medical Board. Also, there are a lot of medical workers from outside coming to this country, and nobody is checking them properly. I can tell you the way we are trained in this country is much better than how some countries train the doctors. Some of those doctors, especially coming from the Asian side, from residency, they go direct to, from medical school, they go direct to specializing in a certain field. If you want to do surgery from medical school, they go straight to doing residency in surgery only. And there are a number of other things. And yet we bring them here, put them in emergency, and we expect them to attend to pediatrics or all other honorable medical diseases, and they don't know. So we need to look at this, the way we are allowing foreign workers to come. We need to provide proper scrutiny. We need to look at the goods, the medical goods. Recently, we've had this issue about, in PMGH, the propofol issue. You know, critical medications being brought into this country without being properly checked. You know, there are some medications that are coming to this country, like, for example, Augmentin. We say it's 125 or 165 on 125. That's what it says on paper. But nobody checks if what is inside is what actually they say it's on the package. Who does that? So we need to look at, and the PHA and the boards, they need funding. You know, if you look at a medical board, you go to the second floor of Aon House or the office they're in, it's a very small, stuffy room. We need to fund them properly so that they can operate. Right now, I don't know how much funding it is and whose responsibility it is, so we need to look at that as well. I think the second last one is on the health services in the district and rural health. If you look at some countries, like Fiji, even in Australia, in the hinterlands of Australia, the national government does not have the capacity to go and deliver quality health services to the remote and rural areas. That's where most of our people live in this country. And I support one of my honorable members. He talked about the partnership with the church health services. I think that that's the way we should go, especially in the remote and rural areas of this country. We need to partner with private medical service providers. Public-private partnership is the way to go in the district, the remote areas that we come from. I put that on the floor. And finally, pre-hospital care. Pre-hospital care talks about before a patient is brought to the hospital, what happens? Who looks after them? If you have a heart attack, you have only 3 minutes to do something. 3 minutes, and if you don't do anything in 3 minutes, you are dead. So right now, we don't have any pre-hospital care system. The only we have is provided by St. John's Ambulance. In the remote parts of our country, people are dying. These deaths are preventable, and they can be saved. I ask this House to consider setting up a national ambulance service. National ambulance service so that we can have people, ambulance staffed with people who actually know how to do the job, who can go to where the patients are, treat them, stabilize them, and bring them to the hospital. We don't have them in our districts. Even many of our provinces don't have it. Thank you very, very much for giving me the time. I'll stop here.
Honourable members, I have allowed enough debate on the Minister's speech, so I now ask. The question is that the question be put. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Deputy Speaker, I like to thank you all members for attending this day of the session. We had very good debates, particularly in this afternoon on the issue of health. Deputy Speaker, before me moving all motions below me, I think most of our leaders who have spoken on the issues of preventive health, from our good Shadow Minister for Health, including the Shadow Minister for Finance as well, and our good member for Nipa Kutubu, who is a learned doctor himself. Deputy Speaker, these issues have been on agendas of government for the past how many governments? In our government, Deputy Speaker, through you, we have prioritized health as a major program. Thus, you have seen funding through KPH, funding through PIP programs, funding through Department of Health, and particularly, if I can make mention, I think the initiative through the House to bring in a POMGEN to do a presentation on the cancer facility. The outstanding funding we need for next year is around 39 million for us to have a world-class cancer facility. That is a big-ticket item for the government, and going forward, we will retire that. Just to give some confidence to our members who feel they are contributing, I think I thank some of the members who have come forth in giving some counterpart funding. I think 500,000 from the member, good member for Pomio, and some other districts who have shown interest. But government too, on its list of priority agendas, health is one of them, and as such, that last funding of 39 million will be a priority ticket item for our government, so that we can have a world-class cancer facility. At the same time, our good member for Nipa Kutubu as well mentioned the intervention on cardiology. They need about an additional 17 million. That too has to come on board, and government is treating that as priority. Even our eye specialist hospital, that is, I think the good health minister and health department have been working with the New Zealand government on a kina to kina basis, where we put 41 million, they put 41 million, and we bring on board. So as some of us have rightly said, POMGEN can come up with some specialist housing, and there is a need for another hospital within our city, and also for central province as well, which the government is very sensitive towards, and we will work towards that. At the same time, there is a need for us to have workforce, and thus things like standalone university agenda going forward, and I think the budget, when Treasurer and our government presents, will reflect some of those agendas where now you may discuss, and we will appreciate that as a government we are sensitive to these things when it comes to health. And me take him, Health Minister too. Me like give him number the sol where Health Minister gave him and Prime Minister gave last time now. Me can adjourn him, move that we adjourn Parliament. Mr. Deputy Speaker, you will understand time you got issue belong hard. Most of us travel overseas. A general figure is you may fundraise, put on papers. You may raise him around close to 50 to 100,000 for us to go overseas for this type of treatments. The figure we're getting from POMGEN is that so far we've had 700 patients who have not traveled overseas and have stayed because the facility is available now. And we say if you add 700 times 100,000, we've been able to save at least 72 million that we could have spent overseas. Tickets, accommodation, everything, we have a facility. So I think we're on the path for us to have these facilities available so that the blind Blimilo country, our agenda is important for our people to be healthy, wealthy and wise. So I think we're moving in that space as well. Deputy Speaker, so I thought I'd just make mention that we are moving in that space, and at the same time, we are aware of some of the many issues that we raise on this Honourable House, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to move a motion without notice.
Is the leave granted?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I move that in pursuant to Standing Order 25, that this Parliament establishes a permanent parliamentary committee on gender equality and women's empowerment consisting of A, Mr. Paul Spakov as chairman, B, Mr. Alan Baird as deputy chairman, C, Ms. Rufina Peter as a committee member, D, Mr. Marsh Narwak as a committee member, E, Mr. Lawyer Boy Samuel, F, Mr. Ricky Morris, and G, Mr. William Bando. 2, the committee shall have the following functions and responsibilities. 2A, inquire into any proposed law or issues referred to in the committee by the National Parliament. B, review existing proposed laws to do with gender-based and women issues and purpose to promote laws and reforms as appropriate. C, provide oversight of implementing government policies and programs related to gender-based violence and also women issues and empowerment. D, provide oversight into the government's implementation of the national GBV strategy and inputs any update on new strategy going forward. E, inquire into how women's leadership can be more proactively supported by the national government, key national institutions such as the PNG Electoral Commission, integrity of political parties and candidates commission, political parties and other stakeholders. F, inquire into the government's policy and programs to promote women's economic empowerment. G, inquire into the work of the National Council of Women and subnational members units and others. H, investigate and report on any other such matters as committee considers appropriate and relevant to promoting gender equality and women's empowerment in PNG in all levels of government and cross sectors. 3, the committee shall have powers to send for persons, papers, records to act during this process. And finally, the quorum of a meeting of this is 4.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I ask leave of Parliament to move another motion without notice.
Is the leave granted? Aye. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I move that in accordance with the Public Works Committee Act, Chapter 28, Mr. Daniel Tindipu be appointed member of the Permanent Parliamentary Committee on Public Works.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Speaker, I leave of Parliament to move a motion without notice.
Is the leave granted? Aye. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I move that leave of absence be granted to Mr. Chris Iveta for the duration of this Parliament due to ill health.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I now move that we adjourn Parliament to tomorrow 10 a.m. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I now adjourn Parliament to tomorrow 10 o'clock a.m.